Several more Week 12 takeaways. South Carolina beat Auburn yesterday. I get off the plane in Nashville. I'm walking through the terminal, and this game's wrapping up. And so I just see a bunch of grown men with their arms folded and their heads shaking violently to the left and right. And I know, Auburn found a way to blow another one, didn't they? Alternate headline, South Carolina pulled it out, didn't they? And sure enough, there it is. Well, one of them was watching Oregon get pasted. I'm about to talk about that in a second. He was off on a side monitor. The main monitor in B&A, it's the code for Nashville, was Auburn falling to South Carolina. And I saw how it ended. And did the punt touch him? Did it not touch him? I know what the argument has been today. But look, I want to talk bigger picture about this. I don't think people have any idea how big an achievement it is that Shane Beamer has got South Carolina headed to a bowl game in year 2. Oh, wait, he's not in year 2. This is year 1. It is year 1 under Shane Beamer. And the talk preseason, when I did media hits in South Carolina, and I do a bunch of them in that state and in the entire kind of area over there, was, what do we think here? 4 wins, 5 wins. There were very few people talking about 6 wins because the schedule was tough and because the team didn't look good. I mean, you got what you got to work with in year 1. Shane Beamer's got South Carolina going to a bowl game. Speaks volumes. And no one cares whether Florida's down. No one cares whether Auburn's down. South Carolina's down too. That's why you've got a new head coach. And the fact that they pulled games off against both of them in year 1, it will pay such dividends for them in recruiting. But it's so great to be able to sell, and it's so great to package up. You know, as that vision we always want to package up in year 1. It's so great to, at least for the time being, validate the hopes that a lot of folks had there when they backed one of their guys to be their head coach. You look at Shane Beamer, he's everything you want a South Carolina head coach to be. It sucks for you he doesn't have the experience. You know, it sucks for you he hasn't gone and won at 2 other stops, and you can just hire a sure thing. But you know what? Some folks around there were willing to gamble and roll the dice on an unproven commodity because he was theirs. He was one of them. And now Shane Beamer's come in, and he's giving them immediate return on investment, which is a rare commodity in this day and age. To read any good news on the newspaper page, some of you get it. If you know, you know. But this was, so that's a good look. It's a good look for South Carolina. But boy, on the other side of that coin, as most coins tend to do, there's another side. It's a tough look. There's no way to sugarcoat this. This is a tough look for Brian Harsin. It's a tough look for Auburn. There were some very sketch decisions made in this game yesterday. I'm not questions the play calling guy. I don't do it. But even I look at that 4th down, and you got very, 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 very short to go, and my man Tank Bigsby's not on the field, and you're throwing it deep, and that's interesting. It's an interesting concept. Now Blake or Brian Harsin said afterwards, well, you know, if we would have completed it, it would have been a good play. It's accurate. That did check out. So we fact-checked that, and it did check out. Independent fact-checkers confirmed. But it didn't work out. And it wasn't a good play call even if it did work out, actually. I'm messing around with you. It's a horrific decision, and he knows that, and they know that. There's going to be a lot of talk about Brian Harsin and the Washington head coaching position this week. I'm just getting you ready for it. This has been bubbling beneath the surface for 2 weeks now. That's been some of the whispers in the industry. It's been made public enough where I feel comfortable talking about it. I think there's some legitimacy to it. I'm just going to leave it at that. I don't think anything's decided. I'm not telling you anything like that. I'm telling you there is reason to take it seriously, and that's all I'm going to tell you. I'm going to move on. Utah 38, Oregon 7. I think 14 points were scored in this game after Oregon mentally had already gone to the locker room for the half. I was watching this game at, I think we were at 37,000 feet last night, and it was one of those aisle seat specials where you got the game on, and then the guy next to you is pulling this, and then the guy on the other side pretending like he's sleeping, but he's pulling this. And eventually I just had to tell him, it's okay, guys, you can watch. And so we're watching this game together. And it's about a minute change left until the half. You know, if you watched it, those of you who did, it's already 14-0. I mean, it's already going to be a tall task to ask of the Ducks in the second half to come back, but they can do it now. But then they give the ball back to Utah, and Utah just carves them up. They go down the field, boom, 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 touchdown. And it's 21-0. That is the cattle prod effect. When we talk about the cattle prod, that is the stun gun to the neck, and you are completely staggered. You don't know what to do. And then Utah ends up running a kick or a punt back, whichever one it was, right before the half. And I'm sitting there thinking, Oregon thinks this thing's 14-0. It's 28-0, just like that. as it turns out, the game was over either way. This is the worst loss for Oregon under Mario Cristobal. Everyone around the Oregon program seems to agree with that today. The padlock stat, all you needed to know Friday was Oregon ended up watching Utah go 11 for 14 on third down. Had I told you that game was going to have Oregon watching Utah go 11 of 14 on third down, you would have said that game's going to have Oregon watching Utah celebrate on their home field afterwards. And that's exactly what happened. Utah is another example of why you don't sell teams down the river in September. Utah started this season off very poorly. Utah has had so much off-the-field heartache. Tragedy, literally, off the field for Utah. But they kept searching for the ignition. They've been in that dark rental car too. They keep searching for the ignition. And you know what happened? As teams with adequate talent and good coaching tend to do, if you didn't give up on them and they didn't quit on themselves, they find it. They find a gear. Good teams aren't just bad all year. It's too long a season. It's 12 weeks. So guess what happened? Utah started getting better. And Utah came into the season. We picked them to win the Pac-12 South. Utah is playing at that level now. They're playing at that caliber level now. Now, they've already got 3 losses, so they're out of the playoff picture. But Oregon got a handful last night. That's the kind of team that Utah, I thought, was going to be capable of being all year. For whatever reason, it didn't pan out early. But man, don't quit on teams. Don't quit on teams like that early in the year. Here's the second thing you need to know. They may face off again in the Pac-12 title game, but Oregon's got to take care of some business first. Oregon's got to play, well, they got to play Oregon State. They also got to play Coach Stewart up there at Oregon State, who, by the way, I'm going to credit my guy, George W. I'm going to call him George W. out on the West Coast. He knows who he is. He's got that beautiful blue check mark next to his name. He knows who he is. He's been campaigning. He's been campaigning for a certain head coach at Oregon State to be more predominantly mentioned in the USC coaching search. And George Reister is right. I don't like acknowledging it because he's wrong a lot of the time, especially when referencing me. But he's right. Jonathan Stewart's up there doing really good things at Oregon State. This is not going to be an easy game. I don't even know if it's Friday or Saturday right now. It's not going to be an easy game. And Oregon, they got to make sure they win this thing first. And they didn't last year. So they're going to make sure they win that one first. The cripplingly disappointing outcome for Oregon yesterday, to say the least. So they're out of the playoff picture. We're going to talk about that more in just a second. Clemson, well, they took care of Wake Forest, is what they did. And to put a finer point on it, they smoked Wake Forest yesterday. Just had a bad feel on this one. We had a great red-hot weekend, but one of the games we whiffed on spectacularly was this one. We had Wake plus 4.5. Never had a shot. It was just the wrong side. Everybody, and I mean everybody, scores on Wake Forest. Even Clemson. In their darkest offensive times, even Clemson scores on Wake Forest. 543 yards yesterday. They had 333 on the ground. They had 6.2 yards per carry. And they finally made some plays, 7 of 11 on third down. Their receivers looked like Clemson receivers. It was a great day to be a Clemson Tiger. Great weather, it looks like. So maybe some of you got a nice little late November base tan as well. Clemson is now, well, they always were, but they are still in position to, believe it or not, potentially win the ACC. What do they need to have happen? Well, don't worry. I was reading one of Chip Patterson's pieces on CBSSports.com. This is what they need. Clemson needs Boston College to beat Wake Forest. That just has to happen because Wake's only got, I think, 1 conference loss right now. Now, you may think to yourself, but it says they've got 2 losses there. And if I'm remembering correctly, one of those losses was to North Carolina, an ACC team. And obviously Clemson's an ACC team, so you fool, what do you mean they've only got 1 conference loss? Well, I'm not going to make it make sense to you, but I am telling you the North Carolina loss does not count as a conference loss. Because the North Carolina game, even though they share the same conference, was scheduled as an out-of-conference game. That's why I love college football. Sometimes you just got to go shruggy emoji. So yes, even though they're 9-2 with 2 losses to ACC teams, they have 1 conference loss, and therefore Clemson does need Wake to lose another conference game. So they need them to lose against Wake Forest, and then the only other thing Clemson needs to have happen is North Carolina State to lose to either Syracuse or North Carolina. There's a halfway decent shot that still happens. So the Tigers are still in it. Texas Tech's not. They got body bagged yesterday, 23-0 at the hands of Oklahoma State, which is a team that has a lot of Clemson resemblance. This is an Oklahoma State team that started off very slow, and now they've really found their groove. Here's the difference. Oklahoma State did not lose multiple games in the process. While Clemson was dropping some games, Oklahoma State was beating Missouri State by 7, and beating Tulsa by 5, and beating Boise by 1, and beating Texas by 8, but they all count as wins. And so in this case, as it turned out, wins were wins. Well, then Oklahoma State found a different gear, and now they're running it up on folks. And they also happen to be playing lights-out defense, and now they're surging. Texas Tech, they got over 100 yards total offense yesterday, but it took all 60 minutes for them to do it. I think they had 108 at the end of regulation, and now we've got Bedlam this week. And that is, for those unfamiliar, Oklahoma State versus Oklahoma. Sooners, 3.5-point dogs in Stillwater. 3.5-point dogs. So here's what you need to know about the Big 12 picture. Oklahoma State is, for my money, easily the best shot that this conference has of a playoff team. We're going to talk about it more in a second. These are the Big 12 standings. If Oklahoma State beats Oklahoma this Saturday or Friday, I get mixed up on the days for these rivalry games. There is no Sooner rematch. It is Oklahoma State versus Baylor, I believe, if it pans out that way, if Baylor takes care of business this week. So Oklahoma, their shot is to beat Oklahoma State and then do it again. That's what they have to do. So it is a very tall order. And we'll break that game down on Tuesday. Also, Cincinnati really handled SMU yesterday. 48-14 was the final. They had 4 different guys with at least 35 yards rushing. So this is obviously the way that you've expected them to play for a while. First question that comes to mind is what took so long. But then the compliment you give is, okay, well, better late than never, obviously. But is it better late than never? Well, I guess the obvious answer is yes. Did it come too late? And that we're going to talk about more in a second. Boy, a lot of teases in this segment, huh? I say that because we put these videos as individual videos on YouTube, so there is no in just a minute. You got to be watching the long form show for this to make sense. Cincinnati's got one more game before they go to the conference title game. And that is not going to be easy, and it's against a team that we've been high on and we've been riding for several weeks. We went 3 consecutive weeks winning, betting on them. We hit the pause button yesterday, and I'm speaking about East Carolina. We hit the pause button yesterday at just the right time. Well, Cincy's got to go to East Carolina this week. They are a 14-point favorite. Make no mistake, this is a losable game. It's not if they are surging at the right time. But I don't know what to make of yesterday's result. So Cincinnati's got one more game, then they got the conference title game. If they win both of those games, this is by far the G5's collective best shot ever of having a team in the playoff. And I figure, since we're talking about that, now is as good a time as ever to ask that question. If Cincy wins out, are they going to make the playoff?